What is good, duelists? So after the replay we posted the other day, it seemed like y'all liked, a return to videos. So I thought I would record another one. And I know for a while there's been a lot of requests about the fish deck that we've profiled a few times on this channel. The list is out there. I'll link it in the description. But basically, this is a deck that I kind of invented when I started playing Edison a lot again, although I've had a few people tell me that they remember it being played around the time. I don't really remember that, but it doesn't really matter. I definitely played Fish probably like 2 formats later, after Formula Synchron got released. I thought they were a really strong deck then. But aside from 1 or 2 other people, I don't think anyone's really experimented with it as much as I have in Edison format in particular. And it's not that I think it's a super duper complex deck, although it probably is up there given context of all the other, formats and decks I've played. It's kind of difficult. But I don't know, I think I have a pretty strong familiarity with all the frog cards already, and pretty good with combo decks, so for whatever reason, I seem to be able to pilot it. And I really just think no one else has kind of put the time and energy in, because obviously I'm not saying that I'm particularly special in that regard. I think that anyone could probably master it if they had to. But without further ado, let's get into the game. And this is against Swagger, and this is actually for finals of some cash tournament on Luxury Gaming. So this is a game I played actually just a couple days ago after kind of, not playing a lot of Edison. And it's definitely a long set, so I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of complicated stuff. And he's actually playing the Vayu deck that I've also had a lot of time with. So I'm going to show his hand this time because maybe I can give some context for how he's trying to set up his plays as well. So to start things off, I won the roll. I just set Duke Frog. I mean, pretty obvious here. That's the best opener, and can search me a Swap Frog, which could be helpful. But I think maybe, I think there's going to be a lot of things that bears a little bit of explaining. So basically, I have Storm already, right? So you could Sarco here for something like a Coelacanth. But if this dupe doesn't trigger, then I don't really have a good way to get 2 monsters on the board to tribute off. So I decided to get Substitute, because even though it might not win me the game, if I go Storm, I already have a monster on board, or maybe this dies and I Fader. Storm, Substitute, mill out all my frogs, Avarice them back, make a board. That's still pretty strong, and I can probably just win with Coelacanth in the long term. So he probably knows this is a Duke Frog, right? I mean, if I'm Sarking for a Substitute, I'm not sure exactly his familiarity with the format, but this would definitely, to me, signal that I was on Fish. And so I got to be honest, I'm not entirely sure about the decision to attack here, but it also flips it up for his Gale, so maybe that's what he's thinking. I'm not really sure. I think maybe you could do a play here where you just set the Sangan, and maybe he ends up setting MST and MST too. But MST is more or less a bluff. So here, turn 1 of Sark, I consider for a minute this play of Crash with Duke Frog, search swap, main phase 2, summon the swap, send Treeborn, bounce the swap back, and then from there I could Moray, or I could just wait till next turn. But that would sort of guarantee me a monster on board, at the cost of, guarantee me a monster on board next turn, rather, because I'll have the Treeborn coming back. But at the cost of taking 900 life and then either being forced to Fader or just take more damage next turn. And being forced to Fader isn't actually bad, because it gives me another monster to tribute off for sub. But, and sort of the context of all this is that I don't want to get Caius. But I basically decided that I can go long in this game anyway, so I don't really want to be taking unnecessary damage by doing a play like that early. Even though this might get outed in a undesirable way. I also don't want to be forced to drop my fader into a potential oppression, if that makes sense. So he does this play where he drops a Cataster. He had another play where he could have gone Gale, make a Brionac or a Goyo, but that if he Goyo takes, then I potentially get another dupe trigger on his turn, or on my turn when I kill it. And overall, saving Gale as an answer seems okay. He tries to search Darkgrepher. Here I say that is over 1500 attack, but he searches Armageddon instead. And yeah, it loads his Plague Engrave too, so it gives him more gas the following turn, because he's threatening a pretty substantial play next turn. Knowing that I don't play a lot of back row, he can go Armageddon, send, make Brionac, pitch, and still have the burial for even more juice. So there's definitely a lot of play here. But now my Sarco has resolved on my turn. He kills a dupe, I search swap, and now I'm sort of ready to go. So now's definitely the time to make a play if I'm going to make a play. I said to Moray first, shuffle back these two because they're the ones I basically want in deck for the fish combo. It's not super clear cut that this is always what I would do, but because also there's a risk I don't draw another water, and that could not be great. But I think it's still good to do it, and I'm not firing off the Storm right away because what is he going to do? Solemn the Moray? That's fine. And I'm still, I guess, not 100% sure if I want to be Storm going off. Usually you want to save the Storm, obviously, for the turn you want to do an OTK or your biggest push. So I hit another Substitute, which, you know, as far as waters to discard is fine, I guess, but I hit Salvage, which is really good. So now I have a lot of juice when I pop off with my Substitute combo. So I can avarice some stuff back, salvage some stuff back, etc. Here, okay, so I send flip-flop because I want to salvage. Basically, the opportunities that I'm going to have to salvage here are most likely at the very end. So I could basically add any two frogs from my deck back to my hand. Or I could do it this way and sort of conceal the fact that I have an extra Substitute in hand. Because basically, I'm going to get back this Substitute, and then I'm going to normal summon a Substitute. So he doesn't know that. If I had just summoned the Substitute, tribute off, end of the combo, salvage everything back, then he knows my entire hand, essentially. So doing it this way preserves a little more information, and because I'm also thinking that I want to keep the Substitute anyway, because maybe I'm getting too deep into the weeds on this explanation, but I think this is what y'all want. So basically, when you do your Substitute combo, there's a couple different, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do, technically. But a lot of the decision point comes from whether you want to end with a Substitute on board or you just end with the dupes on board. Or, you know, there's also flip-flop. There's other variations on that. But the Substitute lets you, because you're going to put Treeborns in the grave, so the next turn, if they don't kill Substitute, you have a +1, essentially. You can get back the Treeborn, tribute it off, and get another monster. But it leaves you a little more vulnerable because if they say, Book of Moon, your dupe frog, then they can swing over Substitute, which is probably going to be an attack position. Or it's just an easier lock to break in general. I mean, you wouldn't do that against something like GB because dupe sub is not really like dupe because they can still attack the dupe frog if you just have Substitute. With two dupes, they can't attack at all. And this gets kind of even more complicated when you have 3 tributes, because you could go dupe dupe sub, 3 dupes, dupe dupe flip, dupe sub flip. There's a lot of variations, and it really just depends on what exactly you're trying to do over the next couple turns, what deck they're on, and the exact game state that you're in, what you've already used, etc. So in this scenario, you can see that I chose to send flip-flop with my initial swap because I knew I was going to salvage everything back, and I thought that I didn't necessarily want to summon flip-flop this turn. So I was going to make a board. I believe I end on triple. Yeah, I believe I end on triple dupe because I'm thinking that I can Substitute next turn with the Treebor, and that's sort of the leisure that Substitoad in hand, the extra one, allows me. I don't have to make a slightly riskier play of leaving the Substitoad on board in attack. I can just fully wall up with the dupes, but still know that I have the engine, the Substitoad the next turn. And I just thought that if he does break this board, and especially if he outs the dupes without triggering their effects somehow, say like a Torrential Tribute chain mistiming thing, then Flip-Flop is the one that I'd most likely want to have in hand. And I determined that because I stormed his MST, and MST is not even a great back row against this deck, so I'm thinking that if he really had more live back row, he probably would have set it instead of the MST. He probably would have kept the MST in hand for something like the Plague that he had. So I'm thinking that Storm, because, and I say this because the other option is Unifrog instead of the Flip-Flop Frog, which can pop a back row. But yeah, I'm thinking that I can grind this out. I can deal with his Synchro Monster on board. The Flip-Flop might be more desirable to have in hand. Overall, I think that may have been a mistake given what happens, because Oppression is a card that really hurts me. But we'll just see how this turn plays out. I draw into a Fishborg and a Swap Frog. So there's a point here that I could extend my combo, essentially, by using a Swap Frog's effect to special summon itself, pitch the Fishborg, and with 3 monsters instead of 2. But I basically decided not to do that because sort of, again, it's like I'm doing my initial push here, and then I'm going to have even more juice with Substitoad the next turn. And I'd rather have more gas to kind of push through the back row, because it's like if he can out, the main way he's going to out this stuff is with Brionac, which I know he can make with Armageddon. And so if he can out 2, he can out 3. So I don't necessarily need to invest what's essentially 2 cards into a third monster on board. I know he's going to be able to deal with it anyway. That, anyway, is my logic for this. And I know that was a long explanation, but that's just how it goes, you know? I mean, this really is what I'm thinking of. I kind of have, you know, shortcuts in my head to understand the situations better and reach those conclusions quicker, because, you know, you can probably see the log. That will turn me about a minute. Or no, sorry, that's his turn. What, 2 minutes or something? But a lot of that was just spent searching. It was a few minutes, okay, you know. Whoops. But anyway, I end up sending most of these, and I keep some frog targets in deck because, like I said, I do want to use my Substitoad potentially even multiple times the next turn, assuming he doesn't draw the Oppression, which he does. So things are about to get kind of scary. So he does do this Brionac play, pitches a bunch of stuff. Maybe he could have done this slightly differently. Special Gale instead of just sending it. You could make a Dark End here, but no big deal. And you know, he keeps checking his remove from play, and this is sort of telegraphing he does that burial. One thing that I think he just didn't recognize, or maybe he just thought he was going to kill me, so it didn't matter. But he could have actually returned my Coelacanth to stop me from getting it off Sarco. And actually, that would have been pretty rough. I'm not sure if I could have won out of this position, because you'll see what happens. But having the extra play against longevity to pair with one of these level 6s that he's going to make, in case I am able to crack anything, he can make a Dark End and come back from that. That's pretty real too. So he does attack with everything. It's lethal on board. I have to Fader. Set the back row. And like I've been saying the prior turn, I'm just worried about Oppression, because anything else I can basically play through with his hand, or make it so that I'm not immediately at the risk of losing by setting Flip-Flop or setting up a dupe block, even though unfortunately I drew another dupe. But, or no, sorry, he bounced both dupes. Sorry. Whoops. But, yeah, I mean, all that being said, if it's not Oppression, I should be able to be fine. If it is Oppression, I'm definitely in trouble. But so this is, I mean, what I would say is a hedge. I don't know exactly the terminology that other people would use, but I'm basically hedging against Oppression because I special summon Swap first instead of going with Substitoad, because if he does have the Oppression, then the only way I'm going to survive is if I set the Flip-Flop. And he's going to be forced to bounce at Brionac. If I just substituted, and especially if I attributed another monster and the oppression's there, I just lose. The only other thing I could do is special summon the swap. So I basically have to do it this way, because if he doesn't have the oppression, then this is kind of negligible. I mean, I could still, like, if I subtoad and he solemns it or whatever, like, losing a card, and I can still bounce back, normal summon the flip-flop is not that big a deal. So I do this, and he does have the oppression. So I'm immediately like, oh, crap, you know? Because, I mean, I understand that there are a few outs, such as Econ, Trunade, Cold Wave. I'm going to get this guy back. I could potentially double tribute if I am able to keep the monsters on board, which, you know, would lose to his Catastor. But, you know, these are all things that I could do, and I know that I likely will be able to stall out the following turn because I set the flip-flop, as you see. He's probably going to be forced to bounce that, and then this is just, I would be taking 46, assuming he attacks everything, which he does. I think it's correct to not try to play around Dagors here. And so I basically have one turn here to draw a few different outs, and I hit Moray, which, I mean, is not immediately one of those cards I mentioned. But you also have to realize that my deck is pretty stacked. Aside from the dead fish draws, because even Unifrog here, I left in deck kind of specifically for this purpose. Unifrog maybe wouldn't get me there if I just drew that here. But anyway, there are a few things I could draw, and Moray just lets me see more of those cards. So I shuffle back, and I shuffle back a Fishborg, which I'm definitely going to want in deck if I resolve this Coelacanth, and I have one Fishborg here already, so you don't really need to. And I shuffle back one dupe, because I would need to summon it off the Substoad if I ever was able to make that play. And luckily, I draw Econ here. And so I know that I have a play, even though now I'm in main one, technically, so I can't just tribute off the Treeborn and get this back. And I don't have another way to special summon anything, so I can't actually tribute summon the Coelacanth. But since all his monsters are synchros, I'll be able to basically deal with his whole field, and then I could even leave him with oppression and set up my own like set of dupe, but I can even kind of do it one better, because if I take the Brionac, I can then tribute it off for Substitute, or put multiple guys on board. I could even synchro with the Fishborg. You know, I actually have a lot of lines here. What ends up happening, I think I actually did this slightly imprecisely. Oh god, yeah. Now I'm thinking a little harder that maybe I could have done even a crazier like OTK situation. But basically, I use my first one to bounce this, and then this still seems pretty good. I don't know what I'm talking about. Then I make a slight mistake here. This is where I make a mistake, because in my head beforehand I was like, oh, I'm going to bounce all these, and then I was like, oh, I can just crash with the Brionac into this. But the thing is, now I can't tribute it with the Substoad, so I have to bring back the Fishborg, and it doesn't actually save me any cards. I still am going to use the same amount of cards from hand. But what it does do is put the Armling in grave, so if he's able to hit another Vayu or Armageddon or something, then he'll be able to use that. All that being said, I'm feeling pretty good, because I know that he's just going to be on oppression and one draw, and I can end with dupe and the Unifrog. So even if he sets the oppression, he's just going to lose it, and then I can threaten Coelacanth in the following turn. Not to mention setting the flip-flop and having that as defense and removal. So, like I said, this would have been slightly better with not discarding the Fishborg and discarding the flip-flop, or whatever I discarded the Fishborg, the Fader, to bounce this instead, and then just tributing off for the Substoad leaves me with the same end board, but not those monsters engraved. If he were playing Armory Arm, which my list, which I think is kind of the standard list, does not actually play, could make it here, but it kind of wouldn't matter. I mean, he would be draw locking himself with the oppression, and whatever I draw, I could discard for the Fishborg and then tribute summon for the Coelacanth. That's also why I kept the Coelacanth out of all the other cards I had in hand. So I draw Gorz, and knowing that one of these is Oppression, I don't want the drawn card to be Torrential. I'm actually not really at much threat, especially given that he set both these. If I were him, I might have kept the Brain Control in hand in case I need to stack for the Plague. Might have even kept the Oppression in hand. I don't know, maybe I kept both in hand. Maybe would have lost to Coelacanth then, which he knows I have. But I poke one, I don't hit the Oppression, but this is all fine because, again, he still can't really get over the Stoop Frog. Even without the Dupe Lock, it's going to make him only attack the Dupe Frog. So perhaps if he had drawn something like an Armageddon Knight, which he only has one more of in the Roto too, then or maybe a charge or something, he could have summoned Armor Master and then swing over this Unifrog, which would have been really bad. So that's kind of why I was saying before, this leaving him with the Armwing Engrave was not super ideal. But he does not draw that, so I guess I luck out. And now I know it was on Depression, so I'm not worried about Torrential anymore. I just had to bring back the Tree Pointers, just more defense. Swing Direct, I'm thinking this is likely a Raikou or something like that. And I leave myself with the dupe on board, not to mention I only have, I believe, oh no, I have 4 more things in deck, so I could have tributed, not gotten back the Treeborn, tributed this off, etc. But I like actually keeping the dupe, and it's going to come in really handy. The other play would have maybe allowed me to make one more Synchro, but this is just as good and protects me in a few other ways. So he draws a dead Dustshoot. I just simply get back Treeborn, tribute for this, swing over what I thought to be a Raikou, acting Necrogarna. Still doesn't really matter. Swing direct with both, puts him at 200. Now he does draw the Armageddon, and for a second here I thought he might be not realize the Dupe Frog effect, but he does. He remembers, and he just goes for this, summon, swings over this. I get to get back a card, get back Cliff up just in case. I mean, I know all the cards. I know I have lethal the next turn. And that does. I have a few different ways I could do this, but I just decided to do it in kind of a fun way. Because he has the Necrogarden Engrave too. Maybe this was actually one of the only ways to actually lethal him, but I think with the Coelacanth effect, there were a few other ways I could have done it with the same kind of result. But I summon Armory Arm here. That's a 1, a 2, and a 1. And I equip the Armory Arm to his Armor Master. Usually when you do this, you're slamming Colossal, not infinite, but a bunch of times, and they take 2,800 each time, or however much attack the Colossal is. But you can also do it in scenarios like these, where you just have any random monsters on board, because as you can see, I mean, this guy is 35, and he would be taking 5,200 points of damage, and I would only be taking 11 and 700. But I need to do it this way because he has Necrogarna, so he can block 1, so the other one would kill him, and he recognizes that and scoops it up. We chat for a minute about the list, because I'm saying, oh, you're using my list, which is maybe an arrogant thing to say, I don't know. But it did seem to be like card for card my list, right? And he's like, oh no, I built this list myself. And I was like, okay, not gonna argue with you. Does seem to be very similar, but I'm not gonna argue with you. And so I side deck. In this matchup, I think I brought in. I usually like to side out the Avarices whenever I think they're bringing in Crows. And I also believe I brought in a Mobius. I believe I brought in a Dark Dust Spirit, a Lightning Vortex, because I thought that they usually side in Vandu's Fiend, and a few other. I brought in Torrential and Trap Dustshoot because if value is kind of a combo-centric deck, especially in these kind of matchups. So being able to break up their plays like that and stop yourself from getting OTK'd against this like Dark-Form Dragon is going to be crucial. He just launches off with the Trooper. It's actually a pretty good play against a deck like this. It's pretty hard for like frogs to punish it, and leaving a trooper uncontested on board can just snowball you so quickly. Maybe if I were more cognizant of this, it might telegraph a Dark Armed. I wasn't actually thinking about that at the time, but my hand is not particularly great. There may be maybe one or two other things I could do, but I was thinking that he might be trying to set up for a Caius, which he does have, or another 10 tribute. And like I said, leaving the trooper uncontested on board, especially since he didn't mill anything there, it did tip me off that he had the deck dev, but he didn't mill any like Virus or Urko. So it's pretty likely that, you know, if I give him another turn or another 2 turns of milling, he's going to hit those goodies and just put me way too far behind with what is a relatively slow hand. So that being said, I'd summon my trusty 1700 beater, Royal Swamp Eel. If he has a Grepher, probably he would just summon an Armwing, but if he doesn't have that, he couldn't swing over this. Might work out for me. That was actually the reason I summoned this instead of Oystermeister, because Oystermeister would technically be better if I next turn was able to tribute it for Substitute, but I'm not really expecting that this guy would last that long anyway. Because he's going to see another draw, and I just figure, yeah, I mean, I think I'm in a kind of bad spot here. Having to normal summon Royal Swamp Eel is not the best thing. But, you know, I'm thinking that if I draw another Extender, if I draw Moray, then I can Trunade and pop off with the Substitute. And Trunade is not super ideal card because it obviously leaves him with all the back rows, and it's not like I'm going to kill him. But, hey, it could establish a board that is difficult to break. He is trying to set up again for his tribute summons. He just sets Torrential, sets this, hoping that I summon more and can trigger his Torrential play, and also, you know, just set up for his Dark Round. You know, there's not much to be done. I think this might be a Raikou, and again, just acknowledge that he's likely setting up for these tributes, so I just swing. Searches a Raikou, doesn't search like a Crow or anything. It's interesting to me that he searches a Raikou here. I would think Armageddon seems pretty good, but hey, you know, do whatever you want. Draws into another Raikou, and what does he do? Sets Raikou, still trying to set up for tribute summons. And I think this is a pivotal turn where I could have popped off. Whether I Trunade or not, I mean, this could still be oppression. It could, I mean, Torrential would have punished me pretty hard. But I still basically decide that, like, giving him back this card and then he resets it next turn, and, like, say I did that, right? Say I Trunaded, he gets this back, maybe I swing with this, main phase 2, I Substitute, send this, and I make, say, a field of, I put all my Treeborns in grave, and I make, like, either dupe or dupe flip-flop or dupe Substitute. Well, the next turn, when I bring back my Treeborn Frog, I guess if I choose to bring back the Treeborn Frog, he could just Torrential there, he could Torrential another summon, and now, you know, these mass spell and trap removal cards in any kind of matchup, and especially in game 2, when you're playing these kind of OTK combo decks, are super crucial. So, like, that's my combo piece. I want to keep it for my combo, my biggest combo. And assuming that I'm able to keep dealing with his monsters, I'm not really feeling like I'm under any threat. I mean, he would have to mill both Vayu and Sirocco, or maybe a Plague, in order to put a monster on board in his turn. So I'm kind of content just to keep swinging through these monsters. I'm like, oh, maybe I can bait him into hitting the face down if you think it's a dupe. But he just hits the eel, and he mills a Sirocco. And I just set my dupe main 2. And so, yeah, I mean, we're playing this slower paced game, and now I draw the Unifrog, and so kind of the same as the past couple turns. There's a few different options here. I could Trunade and pop off, but this way, in this situation, I don't have a great way to pressure through this face down. I guess it's Sangan and Trooper Engrave, Hamsters Engrave as well, so it's most likely to be a Vayu or another Raikou. So I could do something like swing over with my Swap Frog that I could get off the Substitute. But if I do that mid-combo, then he could also pop the Substitute. So I don't have a particularly great way of dealing with this Raikou, even when I substitute, like if I were to Trunade. And then he's also at so many cards in hand, and he's already milled the Sirocco, so he's that much closer to, just being able to like pop off and kill me. So I once again decide to not Trunade and comboing. And I just want to say that you can also see that if I were to do something like that, he's been holding this deck dev the whole time, and if I don't deal with a monster, or if he's able to put another monster on board, I mean, the strength of these like dupe block situations are really in like prolonging the game and making them not be able to deal with them in a resource efficient way. But if you look at what he's got, like he's able to drop this Dark Arm for free once he gets another monster engraved, or kind of put any of these on board at ease, and then at any juncture he could do something like chain deck dev to one of my effects. He doesn't even need to use deck dev. He could use Torrential, Burial, chain deck dev, stuff like this. And then all of my dupe frogs would die. I would not get any of their effects if he does his on chain link too. And so like setting up, using my resources to set up a dupe block here is, in my mind, not even really a super efficient way to do it. I mean, maybe you could say either way. I'm just kind of praying he doesn't have deck dev, so I might as well do the play that's better if he doesn't have it. But I'm still not really under any pressure. So I set Fishborg, but it's like the more monsters I'm putting on board, the better Substitute gets. Because if I'm able to get it into a position where I can mill out everything and with 4 dupe flip-flop sub or something, then I'll take that any day. But until I'm at that point, it's kind of whatever. And so he hits a Crow off the Allure, but that's kind of whatever. But he mills to 4 Darks here, which is pretty crucial, at least as far as not dying immediately. He banishes the Vayu, which maybe well, he has the Burial in hand, so he was thinking to combo with that. And he could actually do something here, like Burial the thing back, banish, and then he would have 3 Darks. So, but he just tributes the Raikou and targets my dupe, attacks over the Treeborn. He does this main phase 2, which I don't think would have been really optimal anyway. But then he also realizes that he doesn't have any Raikous left in deck. And so the charge would just go back to the hand. It's a legal activation. But, so I guess this means he sided out a Raikou. I mean, at the time I was like, oh, I guess he has the 3rd Raikou in hand. Siding out a Raikou while keeping the charge seems a little wonky. I don't think Raikou is particularly great in this matchup or anything, but I think the 3-1 is kind of what you have to keep. But just a little information that reveals he has the charge, he might have another Raikou in hand. But he doesn't get to mill that stuff, which is good, because he would have milled the Vayu, I guess. So now, I'm in a rough spot. He has 2 back row. He crows my Treeborn. And I'm still kind of in a weird position where I don't know if it's super optimal for me to pop off, because now, also when he did the charge thing, he showed me his deck because he wanted to verify that he didn't have any Raikous in deck, that he wasn't like cheating or something, which I don't even really think he's supposed to do. But when I looked at his deck, I saw 1 oppression in there. I think I might have actually just mislooked at it because I'm pretty sure he had both oppressions left in deck, but I was trying to not kind of shark him and look at the deck for too long. Call me a good guy or whatever. But so I'm also thinking that he has an oppression set here. But that being said, he does have the deck dev set up now, and I'm aware that this is a pretty threatening thing. And I was really hoping to do like Econ, take, Substitute, pop off, Trunade. But I really want my Treeborn to be able to do that. I mean, I could have Trunaded, but he would have chained the deck dev, so I'm just trying to buy another turn. But now that he has the deck dev live, it's going to be really, really hard for me to win. He's just trying to set up more tribute fodder here for his vanities. And maybe he kind of inadvertently bricked himself, putting the, like he could have just burialed earlier and dropped the Dark Armed, because now he has too many darks with the DD Crow, and he's not going to be able to get down, because these are 4 that he can't really banish. But I guess he wanted to save the burial for a bigger payoff. So, I do decide to do this, just go for it, because I figure, basically, if he has the deck dev, I lose. So I might as well do something that he doesn't have the deck dev. I show him my hand. He does all the deck dev. I mean, maybe I could have played around this more, but I just don't really think there was much play to be had. At the end of the day, he's going to leave me with these 2 cards. I'm just going to fast forward to the next couple turns. I pin him down for a minute because he doesn't have a live card to set. But he even could have done something here where he burials back this special summon Tribute to Vanity Scene, but he just wants to put another monster on board before he does that. He knows what I'm drawing anyway. I have nothing. He draws a Gale, runs over that. 1 for 1, no monster, 2 dead cards essentially. The True Nate's not going to do anything without an effective combo, and now the Vanity Scene seals the deal. I draw Brain Control. I need to use it basically just to prevent myself from being lethal. I attack over this. It takes 100. Would have been good maybe a prior turn, but and now I'm down to 19. He draws Solemn, which is even worse. I draw my one-sided Vortex, which is just by far too little too late. I mean, even if he had let this go, I just have True Nate, and he's able to probably make another Synchro within the next couple turns. So, I lose game 2 to Deck Devastation Virus. He milled the 1, and he had the 2nd, and that's the way things go. And now we're on to game 3. And so, all this being said, I definitely don't want to lose to my own deck, his deck, my deck, whatever. But these are sort of the 2 decks that I play a lot, Vayu and Fish. So I think it's a good representation of the matchup. So I open another hand that's like not, I guess, immediately a kill hand, but it's a pretty strong hand. I mean, any hand where you're drawing Cold Wave, and I have set up here, so I'm going to be in a pretty good spot. I decided to just immediately pop off with the Substitute. There's a number of things I could do here, because I could lead with the Cold Wave and just stop him from doing any like allure, charge, setting any cards, and there's sort of an outside chance, like if I went Cold Wave, summon Substitute, get swap, Sentry, bounce, swap back. Next turn, I could potentially bring the tree back, pitch for Swap Frog, tribute summon my Coelacanth, and Coelacanth, you can put 8,000 damage on board, but likely he would set a monster like a Raikou or a Necrogarden or something. So I don't actually have a good way to kill through that, and I would rather do something like use the Cold Wave to sort of set up a 2-turn push where I'm able to Cold Wave, summon the Coelacanth, make his board of monsters attack, and then he's not going to be able to set any more traps, and then kill him the following turn. So I decided to do it that way, and even doing it that way, you could maybe set a Fishborg and try to have a bigger combo with Substitute the following turn. But it could put me in a position where I'm like really going through this, but this is really how I think about it. It could put me in a position, say if I set the Fishborg, he goes like summon Armageddon, which he's bad, swing over it, and then I am forced to summon Substitute, bring back my Fishborg to try to combo, and he could crow the Fishborg there. That would put me in a really bad spot. I would just be behind in tempo, and especially if I have Cold Wave before that, then it would basically like stymie my whole turn. So I do it this way. I figure if he has Crow, it's going to use his first Crow on this, and then I'll be able to put another Treeborn Grave or kind of open up my plays here. Because the other thing is, if he does Crow this, I can send the Fishborg for Swap Frog, get the Fishborg back, and then tribute both those for Coelacanth as well. So I have multiple ways to go into Coelacanth next turn, assuming, I don't know, he's not able to like turn 1 deck dev me or turn 1 Vanity Scene me, which is possible. Both those things are possible. He does hit a lure, which Goldo would have stopped, and a crow. So a number of pieces of interruption that, are good side deck cards. Sends a Necrogardna, pretty safe, doesn't want to get OTK'd. Sets the Solemn, doesn't set the Deck Div. I respect it. I mean, no reason to open yourself up to being forced to Solemn the Storm when it's not like I'm playing traps necessarily. Like, you might want to set the Deck Div if you think you're going to summon the Vanities and they might bottomless or something like that, and then you Deck Div on the chain. But it's not like I'm playing any of those cards anyway. I do play Torrential, but he doesn't know that. So now I think for a while about what I want to do. But the first step is going to be getting back Treeborn anyway, and he does crow it. So that makes my decision very easy, because if he didn't crow it, then I would have had to think a lot more, but then it's like, okay, I'm going to do the swap throw thing, because the chances that he has the second crow are pretty low. So I decided to just go here, swap. I pitch my, and I also put the Treeborn Engrave for the following turn, in case all this stuff gets messed up somehow. And I leave my Econ in hand, maybe an argument to leaving Metabo Shark, because with Treeborn and Shark, you can make level 6. Like, I can discard whatever card I drew for the Fishborg. But I think Econ's pretty strong. Like, the ways in which he would break a board like this involve things like Special Summon Grepher McBrionic, and Econ would quickly out that with my Treeborn Engrave. So, and I'm also going to put him pretty low, so Econ could clock him. So I decided to do, there's a number of different options. I know y'all have posted about the spreadsheet. There is, in fact, a spreadsheet. But now I've basically just internalized it, because I can kind of memorize the most common things I do, and the few outlier situations that I do something different, I'm familiar enough with to basically freestyle it. But here, well, for one thing, these are the only 4 cards I can get, so it's not really a complication there, because the 1 Fishborg and Metabo were already in my hand. So I only have 6 targets total. I summoned the 4 here. And I decided to do something. I actually can't kill him, because normally you might be able to do something like double Armory Arm Colossal. But because I'm under Cold Wave as well, the Armory effects won't trigger. It's a good thing to know. But what I can do is I make a Stardust, which is going to, if this is a Mirror Force or anything, or if he's able to set a Raikou the next turn, that's going to come in handy too. But what's also cool is after attacking, it's more damage this way, I decide to put the Armory Arm on my Stardust, because even he has 3 darks actually. And I thought one reason he didn't Necroguard that could be to keep himself at 3 darks. But if he does summon Dark Arm, he's not really going to have much to do with it, because he could crash with the Coelacanth, he could swing over this, but whenever he uses the Dark Arm effect, I'm going to use Stardust and he can't swing over it, because now it's at 35. The continuous effect of Armory Arm isn't affected by Cold Wave. So, promise we're winding down here. He draws into a second Deck Div, unfortunate. And he only has 1 player, right? Set Raikou, pass, and he tries to set these. I say, hey, you're under Wave. And he apparently forgot what Wave did. And I draw into Coelacanth. I have no more targets for my Coelacanth in deck, so, the things I could do here are something like a Mistworm, or, but that could leave me open to an Oppression, and not really a great position, and just use more cards than I need to. So really, I mean, I want to kill him through the Necrogarnet, assuming this is something like a Raikou, or a Sangan, or anything like that. And I think I end up with the best thing to do, which is just tribute summon my Coelacanth with the token in this. And he solemns that, but it really doesn't matter. The only way he could survive there is if this was a hamster. But even then, you see he's on such dead cards. But I just unequip the Armory Arm. I swing over this. So if it is Raikou, I would just negate with the Stardust. It is in fact Raikou. And then, since he's only at 1150, down from Solemn, either one of these connecting would be game, and he only has one Necrogardener for 2 attacks. So that is the game. And with that, I won some small amount of money. But I know this was a journey, probably, so kudos to you if you watched the whole thing. I hope you fish fanatics enjoyed the six-dimensional chess thought process that goes into playing this deck. Shouts out to Swagger for some good games and being a good Vayu Turbo pilot. I think he played pretty well. And yeah, glad to be making a couple more videos. As always, sound off in the comments if you like this, if you hated it, if you think this deck is cheap and lame. Yeah, I'd like to hear about that as well. I really want to hear a 300 to 500 word essay on why I shouldn't be using this deck. But as for now, I'm going to keep using it. It's a fun deck for me, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Peace.